On today's episode, the difference between being a boss and a leader. Which one are you? Are you sure? Then we're going to cover 3 telltale signs of bad leadership. Welcome to the EntreLeadership Podcast from the Ramsey Network, where we help you learn the proven principles for winning as a business leader. I'm your host, George Kamel, and each week here on the podcast, I sit down with some of the best leadership minds out there to help you grow yourself, your team, and your profits. Our guest today is the GOAT, Dave Ramsey himself, founder and CEO of Ramsey Solutions and author of the book EntreLeadership. Now, here at EntreLeadership, we coach leaders every day to stop being a boss and instead become leaders. So we're excited to have Dave on to unpack what that looks like. And this is a guy who's exemplified this for 30 years now. Enjoy this conversation. Well, Dave, welcome back to the EntreLeadership Podcast.
Oh, it's good to be back, George.
I know you love to talk leadership. Usually it's money and a lot of other things, but today we're focused. So you have been leading this company now for 30 years, and I got to know, at one point, were you a boss instead of a leader?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, in the early days, for sure. Because I just couldn't get all the work done by myself, and so I needed help to get the work done. And so I got people, and I thought if I paid them that they would just like come and they would work and they would care. And then no, I started realizing in order to have a team, I had to learn how to do something other than just crack a whip.
Mm. So what did that process look like to move from boss to leader?
Well, I started reading and learning and studying the whole concept of leadership. Because, I mean, I'm old school dinosaur guy, and really, I mean, blue collar is you just clock in, you do your work, you go home and clock out and go home, kind of thing. And so I knew that wasn't going to work, that we had to get people that were engaged and that were thinking on a higher plane rather than just working a job, because the quality of work, the quality of customer service provided, because this whole thing we're on in EntreLeadership and in Financial Peace University is all a crusade about changing people's lives, and that's not something you can just kind of clock in and clock out.
Yeah, it was much more missional. This is a crusade, and you have to find people who don't see it as, well, I'm just a manager. I'm just here to manage people.
Managers count stuff.
Yeah, how do you actually, on paper, go, here's the difference between a boss and a leader? And you do this at our EntreLeadership events, walking through what an entre leader is.
Well, bosses push, leaders pull. Bosses, in general, have things that they are demanding of. They've got a certain task, and so in a sense, when I'm bossing, I'm a taker. A leader is more of a servant, and pulling and inspiring, and giving people great dignity. And the bad news is that a boss can actually get more done today with the team than a leader can. But then the people don't stay engaged because most people don't want to be bossed. Hello. Very few people do, unless there's something wrong with them. And they don't want to be told what to do all the time. They don't want to be micromanaged. They don't want a sense of an iron fist over everything they're doing. And so it works short term. You can get, a little bit like parenting in that sense. You can make your children behave, and they turn into little robots, but then they don't have any critical thinking skills to become adults.
So over time, the work landscape has changed. Back in the day, you could get away with being a boss. It just doesn't cut it anymore. As we're seeing Gen Z and millennials, they want to serve under leaders, and that's what's going to keep them at these companies. And you mentioned the word servant leadership. We talk about in the EntreLeadership book, it's redundant, that all leaders should be servants. At what point did you even hear about that term, and was there kind of this light bulb moment?
Yeah, I don't think that this generation is any different. We talk about millennials, demanding or needing this or whatever. No human being that has any self-esteem and self-confidence has ever wanted to be told everything to do. So that's not new. That's always been that way. But now the work culture, had a lot more bosses in it in the old days and fewer real leaders. But the real leaders in those days even stood out. The real leaders in a military culture where you have to, you have to follow orders. But even those situations, real leaders have that servant mentality. First time I heard it was I was reading John Maxwell, And John is a good friend, and he's in the Christian space primarily about leading in churches, but leading with a biblical mindset. And he said, great leaders are servants. And I thought to myself, not a chance. I sign their check. They're supposed to do what I tell them to do. I'm not serving them. They're serving me. But that's a boss mentality when I thought that. And so it doesn't work. But I also, when I heard servant come out of his mouth, I didn't hear servant. I heard subservient.
Big difference.
Like somehow I have to do everything. In your case, what you were talking about there, the millennials tell me to do. I don't have to do everything. I don't have to acquiesce to every little request from the folks that are on our team. That's ridiculous. So I'm not their subservient. I'm not bowing to them in that sense. But servant simply means, do I have their best interest at heart while we're doing this together? And sometimes I have someone's best interest at heart, I realized, when I let them not work here anymore because they suck at their job and they need to go find a job they don't suck at. And so that's serving someone. Sometimes I'm serving my children when I made them brush their teeth against their will so that they have teeth later. That's a good thing, So that's serving, but serving can be setting out, real expectations, challenges, and holding people accountable to them. That's serving, because people are growing into who they can be that way versus, I'm not going to allow anyone to coast around here. I don't coast and mail it in and half-butt do stuff. And so, but that's serving them to create a culture and environment of high productivity, high energy, high intellect. I mean, you're running with thoroughbreds when you're running at Ramsey. And so that's serving. It's serving people when we don't tolerate misbehavior inside the organization. That's serving. But, that's different than I have to do everything you tell me to do, and I pay you. That's backwards.
So this is not, you're a doormat, you're not soft. There's still, it's just not militant. And so there's this weird space in between.
And so I have your best interest at heart. I actually can care about you and still hold you to high expectations. I did that with my children. They're growing up, but you can feel that I love you and that I care about your future and I care about your spouse and I care about your dreams. And simultaneously, the best way to get there is for us to go freaking win.
Yeah. So when someone gets promoted into leadership, sometimes what runs through their mind is, I'm going to get a new office. I'm going to get this pay bump. I'm going to upgrade my lifestyle. Those feel a little bit vain and frivolous. What should be going through someone's mind as they step into leadership for the first time?
Well, they feel vain and frivolous because they are. That's a vain and shallow mentality. Our good friend Pat Lencioni has a new book out called The Motive. And, it's a great read, by the way. You gotta read it. But it's, again, one of those parable-type style books where he tells a story of a guy who had the wrong motive to be a leader. And when he changed his motives, he actually became a real leader. But your motive, again, is not what you can get. It's what you can give. And the paradox is that when you approach it from that, not only does the person in the organization get more done, is shinier, all those kinds of things, but you actually also at the end of the story end up more satisfied as a leader by serving and how you can knock blockers down for your team, get things done, help them, lift them up, hold them accountable, all the different things you have to do in the leadership seat that has nothing to do with the corner office or the pay or the, quote, privilege of being a leader. And so, we don't want anyone that's moving into leadership unless their goal is to make their team better, not I want a corner office.
Yeah, well, you've probably seen a lot of great leaders, and you've also dealt with some crappy ones. How do you draw the line of, hey, I'm going to sniff this guy out and see if he's got bad motives? How do you feel that out? How do you discern?
I don't know that you can in one technique or one formula or anything. It's just reps. If you just watch what they're doing, most people have a pretty good sniffer. You can sniff them out, and they'll, over time, and it doesn't take 2 years, but, you're not going to be able to have one meeting with a person and go, that gal, she doesn't cut it, or that gal is a superstar. You're not going to find that out. But, check the fruit. What's happening? How's the team's attitude? I remember years ago we had a lady on our team that was a world-class leader, and really the thing that she did the best was she created an environment on that team that her team members were intensely loyal to her, as well as to the mission that group was working on, and she was just naturally pastoral in how she went about her life, and it created these deep bonds with her team, and they would do anything for her as a result. And how she got that tremendous loyalty, she gave tremendous loyalty. So you can watch the fruit and go, oh, I'm a fruit inspector. That's what's happening over there. This apple's rotten, or that tree's full. Look at that.
Versus someone who's raising their hand going, oh, I want to be in leadership, but there's no fruit there. And you go, what's the real reason?
Yeah. Almost always someone who's jumping up and down, pick me, pick me, pick me, is not who you want. Because that tells you right there it's about them. It's about them. Instead of, hey, how can I add value? How can I add, that's a John Maxwell phrase or a Ken Coleman phrase that we use around here all the time. How can I add value? Because every one of you guys out there, gals out there listening right now that run a company, if someone comes in and can add value, you're not going to keep them from adding value. And you're like, okay, I can show you how to do this, and that would be awesome that you did that. And all of a sudden, they are leading. You can watch around the company, around the culture, and there's people who are leading even if they don't have titles. They're following them in social engagements. They're joining their Bible study. They're they're on their softball team. Everybody wants to be on that guy's team. Everybody wants to be on that gal's team outside of work. And so you've got some people who are leading, but they've just never been given the job of leader.
We talk all the time around here that we breathe rare air, and this place is different. It's not corporate America. We try very hard intentionally to go the opposite way as corporate America. And you've seen a lot of things over 30 years of leadership. What still grinds your gears when it comes to seeing poor leadership out there?
Well, poor leadership out there is almost always selfish, and it's almost always greedy. Poor leadership is a taker rather than a giver. Poor leadership is pushy rather than pulley. Poor leadership is more worried about optics than principle. They're worried about how something looks, and they spend all their time building this facade of the way the company looks rather than actually going and doing stuff. They spend a lot of energy, a lot of bandwidth, a lot of resources in virtue signaling out there today.
We saw a lot of that with the pandemic, for sure.
Yeah, pandemic and a lot of the political stuff that's happening. And it's like, I got work to do over here. That I'm not mad about it one way or the other, but I don't have time to stop and do all that. I got people I'm trying to get out of debt. I got people I'm trying to teach how to lead an organization with EntreLeadership, and so that's not my thing. Part of what happens is companies get to making enough money, and it's happened to us that we take our eye off the ball. We forget to dance with the girl that brought us. We forget to stay on task because we've got this money and this bandwidth. We've got these resources, and we're like, we could do that over there, or we could do that over there, or maybe we need to make a statement about this, and nobody gives a crap. Just do your deal. But poor leadership with this virtue signaling is grinding my gears big time right now in corporate America.
Now, every leader wants to be seen as confident, successful, strong, like they've got it all together. But at the same time, they're bound to screw up. We're all humans. We're all people. So in your experience, how do the best leaders approach failures and mistakes when it comes to the team?
Well, the thing is this. Nobody is fooled. Everybody knows you made a mistake. So not dealing with it, not talking about it, is not going to I've got it all together. I didn't make a mistake. They already know.
Or you blame someone else.
Hey, I hand the credit, steal the credit and hand the blame, right? And but no, the leaders that I've enjoyed following the most were the ones that they get her done and they're excellent and they push. But when they stumble or when they screw up, when they get mad or when something happens, and they come back and they go, you know what, I screwed this up. And what I had one this week that I had to sit down with our leadership team and I'm like, guys, that right there that really got me in a bad place, and I really made a bad decision on that, and I screwed up. And not only did I screw up, but let me just not only do I tell them that I screwed up, but I unpack why. Okay, what's going on inside of me that caused me to do that, or almost do that, or whatever. What's happening? And that's with my closest leaders, our top gang. I don't necessarily get on stage in front of 1,000 people and go, well, I'm an idiot, But even there, if there's times we're going through stuff and I'm going, guys, we made a mistake on this, and I'm not proud of it. And hey, but I'm also not quitting, And I'm not gonna, I'm everything. I don't do cancel culture on myself, so I'm not quitting just because I made one mistake. Apologize, even talk about what was happening inside of me that did it. Just be authentic. Just go, this has happened, and the way I grew up, man, that activated me in a way it shouldn't have, and man, I'm not proud of that. I'm not doing that again. I don't like me when I do that, and I know y'all didn't either. So let's all work together on this. And sorry, guys, next time. But it's like if let's say you get frustrated with your kids when they're little and they're jumping around all over the place, and you're like, would you please sit down? And then you go, I gotta apologize. Okay, so look, I'm sorry I raised my voice on this. Sometimes Dad does that, but that doesn't mean I'm resigning as parent. I'm still in charge. I'm still gonna take care of this child. I'm still gonna nurture them. I'm not gonna go, well, I made that one mistake, so you're going to the orphanage now.
You got to keep going.
Yep.
And there's a level of extreme ownership and humility that creates trust with the team. When I go, man, Dave really owned that one, and that showed me that I can own my mistakes too, and I don't have to hide stuff. And that's actually great leadership.
Yeah, and I had one guy that made a huge error that cost us
some zeros on the end.
Yeah, some zeros. I'll just leave it at that. And he came in and he said, I need to resign. And I'm like, I just invested that amount of money in your tuition at the School of Life. So, no, you're not taking all that knowledge somewhere else. We just all learned a hard lesson together, and, you're staying. And because he doesn't have a pattern, a track record of regularly doing that. Now, regular pattern of that kind of failure, that means he can't do his job, and that's a different thing. I would accept that resignation. But I read that about Andrew Carnegie 1,000 years ago, of Carnegie, if you're from proper from the Pittsburgh area, Carnegie Steel, and one of the steel magnates at the turn of the century and turn of 1900 or so. But a guy made a $250,000 error, which in those days would be millions today, right? Man came in, and that's exactly what Carnegie said to him. No, I will not accept your resignation. I've just invested heavily in your education. And so that's what we all do. And we go, okay, it's not a pattern. It's not repeated. I make a lot of mistakes. My goal is to not make the same stupid mistake twice, because I'm going to make new ones. So I might as well have a variety in life,
Spice it up.
Yeah.
So we have now raised up a whole lot of leaders around here. We call it Ramsey Solutions Leadership. I think over 200 leaders now inside of this organization. If you're trying to raise up new leaders, how do you go about that the right way? Are some people just poised for leadership? Can you turn someone from a boss to a leader? What does that process look like for us?
Well, I think whoever's leading them, it's their job to mentor them and to continue to grow them, and on a case-by-case basis go, okay, here's what we do, and here's how we do this. And we've got our core values in place. We've got lots of processes in place here that are standard Ramsey ways of doing things, and you need to conform to that to start with. The big thing, though, is you got to have that right spirit, that humble, hungry, smart from Lencioni. And humble is not that I think less of myself. It's that I think of myself less, according to C.S. Lewis. And so that's real humility. And so all I'm doing is I'm looking at the team going, how can I serve you that we all get our work done easier, better? My job is to run interference, take out the blockers, get the bureaucracy out of the way so you can get your dadgum work done. Make sure you've got the resources and the tools to get it done. Brainstorm with you new ideas, and the newer you are, the more hand in glove I've got to be, and the longer you've been doing this stuff, the more delegatable it is. But you've just got to mentor. You got to spend time with them, and then as they learn it, back off. And the more they learn, back off more. And the more they learn, back off more. And the more they produce, they've earned the right for you to lessen your training time with them.
Yeah, and we invest a lot of time and money into raising up these new leaders. And it started obviously with just one leader. Now with over 200, that, we have obviously layers of leadership at this point with our executive team and board members. So how and why do we invest so much time and money into this? Is it worth it in the end?
Oh, well, it's the only way to get things done. I mean, it's a very practical thing. John Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership, and he's right, including revenues, And so when things are led poorly, then you've got high turnover, which is very expensive. When things are led poorly, the business ideas aren't coming out, the customer's not being served, the execution is poor and limping, and so it does. I have had areas of this business over 30 years that I look back on and I go, why is that such a good idea? Why can we not get that moving? And eventually we keep looking at it and we end up changing the leader out and the thing takes off. The idea wasn't bad. We just didn't have the right people to push it through in there and pull it through, for that matter, in there. And so, I can think of about 3 examples on the top of my head right now inside the building that are very successful business units that at other times, decades ago or more than a decade ago, had a different leader in the seat, and it was producing nowhere near what it is now in terms of results, life change out there. The people coming back and saying this information, this inspiration that you gave us changed everything, and we're really, really, really going zoom on some of this stuff right now. And it really is because we got better leaders in the seat.
Yeah, right person on the right seat on the bus. It's important. So most people listening, they want to assume that they're solid servant leaders. But what is a good way to gauge for yourself if you lean towards boss or leader? Is it getting outside feedback? Is there, a test we can give ourselves? How do you measure that?
I'm not positive. I don't think there is a test. There probably is a test. I don't have one. But this idea that if you just step back and go, okay, what is my motivation? And again, back to Lynn Shoney's book, what is my motive for this? Am I just trying to get work out of this person? Then that's a taker. Now I'm a boss. But if I'm going, all right, I'm looking here at George, and I know what George's dreams are. How can I help him hit those dreams? Because along the way, our dreams will all come true, And so the more successful George is, the more successful Ramsey is. And, and I'm thinking about your wife, Whitney, and I'm thinking about, the new house you guys just got. And how can I, in the midst of that, go, okay, and we got some work to get done. And George is a big part of that. And, those things they don't have to be like the only way for Ramsey to win is for its employee or team member to lose. It's quite the opposite. It's a win-win symbiotic relationship. And so if you're approaching it from what can I get rather than what can I give so that we all win together in a win-win, that tells you right there.
Mm. Well, you have done a great job of that, you and the leadership team, of raising up now almost a quarter of the company is leadership. And that tells me there is a culture of leaders around here, and we've been very intentional about that. And I appreciate you for 30 years now really being honest, showing us the playbook of how you did it with all the failures and mistakes and all of the successes and the things you've learned to help the leaders listening avoid some of those and continuously grow. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. The failures and the mistakes give you a sense of humor.
We all
you don't
need
have
that.
something to laugh about, you'll be crying all the time.
That's a big part of leadership. We need to lean into that for sure. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast, Dave. Appreciate you.
Thank you, George.
Big thanks to Dave Ramsey for joining us today. Always a joy and an honor to have him. All right, coming up next, we've got a new segment for you, a teaching segment with our friend Daniel Ramsey, EVP of EntreLeadership. And he's going to share 3 telltale signs of bad leadership to help you move from boss to leader. Here's our conversation. Daniel, welcome back to the podcast. How you been?
Good. I've been doing great. It's been a fun season.
Well, you are back by popular demand to talk about this main issue here. In culture today, there's a lot of bosses and a lot of managers and a lot of toxicity, and we're seeing so many people resign and try to find work that matters with leaders who care. And so we want to go over some of these telltale signs of bad leadership that you see out there that you see leaders fall for.
Mm-hmm. So as I've been in leadership, looking at the traps people fall into pretty often, and it's interesting, people hit it at different points in their career. Sometimes people reach a peak and a new struggle comes along for them, or a bad habit seeps in and festers. And so one of the big things that I see leaders sometimes get over time, especially successful leaders, is pride. Pride is a real hard issue that leaders face. And when they let pride sink in, it has a lot of horrible, horrible effects downstream in their life and in their business and in their team and the culture. And so some of those, for example, is if you're prideful, if a leader thinks really highly of themselves, they're not going to think highly of others. They're not going to treat others with the same respect and dignity that they may have previously done. They'll also not be interested in learning from their team or the people around them. When someone's really prideful, I've seen them really fail to ask for people's input, ask for their perspective, and just be constantly learning. Jason Williams, who's the vice president of EntreLeadership, one of the things I love the most about him and that has made him so successful is he's so eager to learn. He is so genuinely interested in the people around him and getting their perspectives and growing all the time. He's so hungry. And that's one of the things I see most successful leaders have is that hunger to learn and to grow. And oftentimes successful leaders, they reach that pinnacle, they grow and grow and grow, and they think that they've made it. They think they're at the top, and they think they've learned all they need to learn, and that's just unfortunately wrong. You know, the world changes, people change, and we have to continue to learn, adapt, gain perspective.
So the antidote to that is humility. And
Exactly.
The best leaders, and as I look around, they all have this trait. And a lot of, in culture today, we look at humility as a weakness and as something that you shouldn't have. You should be confident. And we want you to be confident, but humility is not, thinking less of yourself. It's just thinking of yourself less and asking for that input and going, you know what? I don't know. And maybe I don't have the best idea in the room. And so that's a huge piece that leaders need to work on.
Yeah, humility is massive. And so learning new things also humbles you. One of my coach, his name's George, he often challenges me to put myself
Not me, by the way, just for listeners out there.
That's right. It's a different guy. He challenges me to put myself in situations where I'm not good at, or things that will naturally frustrate me, because it not only it helps me adapt and grow and overcome, but it also keeps you humble. Like when you're constantly putting yourself in different situations where you don't have it all figured out, it does humble you. And so it's really good to check yourself and to be humble.
And that's one of those things, if you're the team member, we all want to look up to a leader who has that humility, and that's going to trickle down to the rest of the team. We don't want to create a whole team of prideful people, because that's what we see the model is. So this is super important long-term for building culture as well.
That's right.
So other than pride, what's another sign you've seen of just poor leadership?
One of the hardest things to do, and this is something I've really struggled with over the years, is my ability to create clarity for the team or clarity for myself. And what I mean by clarity is not only just communication and communicating well, but it's being really clear on what our team members are responsible for. What am I responsible for? What is the lane that I should be driving? And then same with the team. I can look at each individual and they know what their priorities are. They know the expectations I have for them. They know what they're responsible for driving. And that helps them be a better teammate. That helps them focus on the right things and say no to things that they shouldn't be focused on. And so clarity is always something that goes away quickly unless you continue to maintain it. And there's been a lot of times, and right now I'm having to double down on adding clarity to where we're going and the things we're working on and the things we should be focused on. And so I have to do that for myself. It's easy just to focus on others and think about the team and what they need, but I have to also create that clarity for myself of, hey, what should I be focused my time on? Georgia, I don't know about you, but oftentimes during just the go of business throughout the week, I'll look up towards the end of the week and I'm like, what did I do? What did I accomplish?
Just everything happened to me.
That's right. And so one of the questions I try to ask myself every day is, what's my number one thing? What's the number one thing I need to knock out today to make the business move forward? And so by doing that for myself, by doing that with my team, I'm creating clarity on where we focus and what's the biggest impact I can have.
And there's a direct connection there. If the leader has a lack of clarity, then the team definitely has a lack of clarity. And your team craves that clarity. Everyone wants to know what winning looks like, what they need to do to get there, have those expectations set. And yes, that comes down to very clear, open, frequent communication, but it also comes down to things like key results areas and putting things down on paper so that we can all look back with accountability and go, this is what we agreed on.
One of my favorite tools we have at Ramsey is a KRA, exactly what we were describing, key result areas. We've done a podcast on that before. We'll do another one again soon, I'm sure. I love talking about key result areas because it is clarity on paper.
And we always say to be unclear is to be unkind. And our friend Donald Miller says, you confuse, you lose. And that's more on the branding side, but it applies. No one wants to be confused. That's where mistakes are going to happen, failure is going to happen. No one's going to see amazing results in the midst of confusion and chaos. So this is a huge one to get a handle of. So what's your last one here? Telltale sign of bad leadership.
The last point I would make is fear. Fear is something that I see creep into leaders and has a huge, horrible effect on the team and the morale and the culture. And so I see this come, again, like pride. Sometimes it seeps in later in someone's career. Sometimes it's something that someone's more naturally they struggle with. And so, Dave, one of our core values at our company is fear not. And he exemplifies this so well of pushing through decisions and not letting fear negatively impact a decision. Now, sometimes fear causes you to take a step back and wisely discern and get perspective on a situation. And that's not what Dave's talking about when he says fear not, or when our core value states that. But I see fear, what it causes negatively is it causes leaders to slow down too much. They become paralyzed. They don't make decisive decisions. They don't move forward in a meaningful, intentional way. They just kind of wait for things to happen. I also see fear create where leaders are unwilling to embrace change. If they're afraid, they're not going to embrace how the environment around them is changing, or things that their customers may be asking of them, or maybe a marketing campaign isn't as effective as it used to be, and so we need to create a new strategy. I've seen leaders resist change because they're afraid. They're comfortable with what they know. And so if you as a leader can really focus on, hey, check yourself, am I letting fear cause me to not move at the speed I would normally move at? And really make sure you're not allowing it to negatively impact you.
Yeah, this is a tough one, especially because the team is looking to you for confidence. And if they sense fear, if they smell fear, they're going to then go, oh my gosh, the leader doesn't have this under control. So how do you, communicate to to the team with vulnerability where you go, listen, I don't really know what the next step is, but I know how we're going to make that decision. How do you communicate that?
Yeah, so there's oftentimes the team asks questions of me, or I get up in front of the team and give them an update, and I don't have a clear answer of what's next, or I don't have a clear answer to the problem, like a solution to the problem. And it is really good and healthy as a leader to admit that and just acknowledge that you don't have it all figured out in front of the team. Now, what's dangerous, and we talked about this on a previous episode, what's dangerous is when you don't actually show your team that you're doing what you can to solve that, or to get the answers, or to create a solution. And so it's fine. I think it's really healthy to get up in front of your team and admit that you don't know the answer, but then you need to follow up and show that you're committed to figuring out what that answer is. And so that's both through your words and through your actions. And so if you're not following up with them soon with the answer, or following up with them soon of, hey, here's what we're doing to figure it out. Hey, we're taking this action, this action, this action to help us learn more so we can make a decision. That goes so far with the team when they see you do that and you actually live out what you're saying in front of them.
Yeah, and that's where things like core values and frameworks and processes really come into play, because it gives you a foundation to where you go, okay, we're not just going to wander through this fear. We have a way to navigate this with our leadership team, or for myself as a leader. So what is the antidote to fear as you've experienced it?
Wow, that's deep, George.
We can't just wish it, we can pray and do all kinds of great things, but how do you actually push through that and make the right decision?
I think you have to believe that there's a solution, or believe that there's something on the other side. And so, there's been plenty of seasons where we've had a problem and you don't see light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know what the solution is to getting over that obstacle. But if you look at an obstacle, you look at a challenge with a healthy level of intensity of saying, hey, I don't know how we're going to solve this, but I'm committed to figuring it out. I think that confidence, that eagerness, that wanting to dive in and see a problem as an opportunity really can go a long way and help you. You may feel fear, and fear is natural. It's a natural feeling. It's okay to experience fear. It's not okay to make decisions based on it. It's not okay to slow down, or to be paralyzed by fear. You should continue to move forward. You may continue forward more cautiously, and that's okay. But as long as you're moving forward and taking steps in the right direction, it's okay you'll push through that fear.
Yeah. And, that's a contagious feeling. And so if you're feeling that fear and that's kind of now spreading amongst the team, that's going to create gossip. It's going to create a lot of terrible things. And so there is a level of optimism you need to have as a leader that isn't, unfounded. You're not just going, everything's going to be fine while the ship is burning. But there is a level of calm and optimism that you need to relay to the team that instills hope in them.
Exactly.
That's good.
Exactly.
So how do we get to the point where we can't master these? It's something you have to work on every single day. Like you said, this can seep in. If you've been a leader for 20 years, it could happen today. Pride, lack of clarity, and fear. How do you make sure that you're protecting yourself from falling into one of those traps?
I think it's just being aware that there are traps you could fall into. I think simply you checking yourself on a regular basis or taking time to get above the business and look down and assess your own performance, assess your own, hey, how am I really doing as a leader? How's my team really receiving me? If you can be honest with yourself and look in and do that hard work, then you can really see if those things are becoming an issue for you.
Well, Daniel, always love having you on the podcast, always bringing us great wisdom. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, George. I appreciate you.
Always love hanging out with Daniel Ramsey. That guy is a true leader right there. Love the way he's leading our team here at EntreLeadership. All right, time for some segment feedback. Did you like that new teaching segment? Did you not? This is a rare occasion, but we want your opinion, even if it's a bad one. So call and leave us a voicemail, 844-944-1070, 844-944-1070. You can't hurt my feelings, I promise. All right, let me ask you a question. Have you ever met a born leader? Guess what? There's no such thing. It was a trick question because leaders are built, not born. And that means you've got to keep building. That's why we host EntreLeadership Summit every year. This is the premier leadership conference that will challenge, inspire, and motivate you to blow past the status quo with teachings from the world's top minds in leadership. And next year, we're going to be right here in our hometown, Nashville, Tennessee, May 30th through June 2nd, with a lineup of speakers that will knock your socks off. Get this, we've got Ken Coleman, Dr. John Deloney, Willie Robertson, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Patrick Lencioni, Dr. Amy Cuddy, Maneet Chauhan, and Dave Ramsey. We couldn't fit another doctor on stage if we wanted to. What an amazing lineup. You're not going to get this anywhere else. So get ready. Make sure you get your tickets. Go to EntreLeadership.com/summit to do that and to learn more. Hope you enjoyed today's episode of the show. If you did, give us a follow, subscribe, and review wherever you're listening. And do us one better. Share this episode with your team, with your friends, or on social media. You can also follow us on social media at EntreLeadership. This episode was produced by Tim Hull, edited by Jacob Harrison, and mixed and mastered by Will Rudder. I'm your host, George Kamel, and on behalf of the entire EntreLeadership team, thanks for listening. Until next time, keep learning and keep leading.